powerful testimony, who made me the woman that I am today, the woman of faith. God has blessed me with faith, and it was due to my first son's birth. I was 5 months pregnant when my son was born. He was born 1 pound, 12 ounces. And he went under a pound. I get emotional because when you could put your son in your hand, he went under 1 pound. I remember I went to the supermarket and I asked for a pound of ham. Knowing that my son was less than a pound, I broke down in the supermarket. And during that time, the doctors were saying that my son was gonna have a lot of problems if he lived. During this process, I was the only Christian because my ex-husband wasn't a Christian at all. And I was praying every day to the Lord, and I was saying, Lord, I love you, I serve you. And little did I know that they already had where they were gonna bury my son. They already had the cemetery. They were preparing me for his death. But I knew who my God was. And I never, ever thought that my son would die. My son was in the hospital for 5 months. During those 5 months, I lived in the hospital. And he was born in New York Hospital, which is one of the best hospitals in the world for preemies, preemie children. I remember that I lived in Queens, and I was going to have the baby in LaGuardia Hospital. And LaGuardia Hospital they didn't have the equipment for me to save my son. So I remember the ambulance came to pick me up. And New York's traffic is the worst traffic in the world. They picked me up on rush hour. You could imagine the highways. And this ambulance went so fast that in the blink of the eye, I was in New York Hospital. And when I got there, I was going to spend 4 months. I was 5 months pregnant. I was going to spend 4 months in the hospital. But the very first night that I was there, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to spend 4 months in this hospital. I'm going to watch TV. I'm going to relax. 4 months. Nice. That's what I thought. But that night, my back broke. And I'm like, I'm shocked. I wasn't expecting that. So then that morning when that happened, they told me, the doctors, that I was going to deliver my baby at 5 months. So you could imagine, I started talking to the Lord, and I was saying, God, I don't believe this is happening. What's going on, God? I trust you. I love you. What's going on? At that moment, the doctor came in and said to me, I don't know what you've been eating, but your son's heart is powerful. So that brought me joy, but still at that point, I didn't know that God's hand was already in it. When the doctor told me that his heart was really powerful. And so when my son was born, and I delivered the baby like if he was 9 months, everything was normal. And the doctor saw the baby, she just yelled out 5. 5 is a good number to me because it's 50-50. So I was happy with that. But little did I know, when I went to see my baby, he had wires all over him. I couldn't even see his face because he had tape and wires and monitors. So when I first saw him, I was shocked. I almost fainted when I saw him. So at that point, doctors was telling me that he may not live, but I never, not 1 minute, doubted that my son was gonna die. He went through so many things. And one morning I was getting ready to go to the hospital. I have a cousin who she was in Japan. She was in Japan. She called me and she said, and she's a powerful woman of the Lord. Right now she lives in Texas and she's translator for Copeland's ministry. Her and her husband, they have a powerful ministry. And she called me and she said, Ruthy, I called mom in Puerto Rico and she told me what happened. I want you to have faith. I know that God is going to do something before you go. And I was sitting down and I said, yeah, I already know that. I already, when somebody's going through something and you tell them God is in control, God, believe me, we know that already. So before she hung up, she says to me, let me pray for you. So when she started praying, she started speaking in these tongues that I've never ever heard in my life. Until this day, I never heard tongues spoken like she spoke that day. So that caught my attention. Now, when I was 16 years old in New York, I was in the youth in church. I used to speak in tongues. But after 16 years, 18 years old, I left the Lord and I wanted to taste what was out there. And this morning when my cousin was praying for me, so from 18 and I had my son, I was 30 years old. And I never spoke in tongues, even though I went back to church. I went back to church before I had my son. At 29, I returned to the Lord. And that morning when she was speaking in tongues, I sat up so straight because I said, wow. But then the Lord took over and the Lord spoke to me and said, I have never left you. And from this moment on, I healed your son because he belongs to me. The Lord told me that 3 times. He says, he belongs to me. He belongs to me. I want you to rest upon my words and testify. And at that moment, I started speaking in tongues in my living room for the first time after all those years. And after that happened, and my phone, it was ringing because, you had call waiting and everything. And people were calling me, but I was on the phone with the Lord. And when I hung up, my cousin lived on the first floor and she comes up and she says, oh my God, you have this glow all over you. What happened? When I told her what happened, she started crying. So at that moment, I was so happy. When I used to go to the hospital, I never wore makeup. I was always so sad, but praying. When I got to the hospital that day after the Lord spoke to me, I did my hair. I had makeup on. I got dressed beautiful. The doctors in the place did not know who I was because I would live in the place. So I give glory to God because I was the only one who had the faith that my son wasn't going to die. But then the devil, a couple of months into the situation, I walk in and I see like 15 doctors around my son. He was in ICU in New York hospital. And when you're in ICU, only the parent could go in and the grandparent. That's it, nobody else. But when something is happening to one of the children everybody has to leave the ICU. So when I walk in and I see all these doctors around my son, for 1 second, my knees shook and I was gonna pass out for 1 second. But then I got a grip and I said, devil, you are a liar. I know what the Lord told me, and he said he healed my son. So when I went in, they said that they all heard my son had a heart murmur. When you're a preemie and that small and you have a heart murmur, that's heart surgery that they're going to do on your son. They need to do heart surgery to fix that. So they told me that, and all the doctors, they all went around and they all say, yes, I hear it. Yes, I hear it. Yes, I hear it. You know what I did? I just looked at them and I says, you do what you got to do. But I know what God told me. So everybody had to leave because they were going to do some exams, x-rays and everything. Then we all came back in, and I used to stay in the hospital till his last feeding, which was about 12 o'clock. Then I would go home, sleep a little bit and come back. They came to me before I left, 12 midnight, and said, oh, Mrs. San Martin, everything was negative. And for a minute, I said, excuse me, what are you talking about? Because during that day, remember, I went in the morning and they're telling me this almost at midnight. I totally forgot what they were doing, because I know when God speaks, he does what he says. I never doubt my Lord. I never doubt him. And he came home on Thanksgiving Day when he was 9 months. Thanksgiving Day. Isn't God awesome? My son left on Thanksgiving Day. From that moment that the Lord spoke to me, my faith has been enormous. I have unshakable faith. And in a lot of situations, you need to have unshakable faith. And that's when nobody could move you. You are standing on the rock, which is Jesus Christ. And no matter what, you believe in the Lord. And let me tell you, God is awesome. And my son is 32 years old today. He is normal. He is healthy. So that's testimony for my son, because my son has a calling. When he was little, he used to pray for people because people wanted him to pray for them. And because he prayed beautiful. But you know, the enemy tries to take them away and everything. But I still know that he doesn't serve God. He fears God, but he doesn't serve God right now. But I know he has a calling, and I don't fear anything because I know that he's in the palm of Jesus' hand. So I know when he comes, it is going to be supernatural explosion here on earth as it is in heaven, because God is going to bring it down here. And I know that he is going to serve God with all his heart. He is a man of honor, integrity, and there's nothing that the enemy could put before me that I doubt that. Because the Bible says you and your house will be saved. What can I tell you? My God has never failed me. Never failed me. And I know he never will. God bless you. I hope I gave faith to somebody who's going through something hard, physically or spiritually. But whatever it is, nothing is impossible for God. He is there. The only thing you have to do is just reach out and believe and talk to him. He will never leave you or forsake you. That's one of his promises.